chepek kuduelo mabiro etu under mic. Dong parodit kod jok mawuoye etu under mic. Seche tin sud buta wawinji etu under mic. Wala wachokre wabed piny biwa winje ero chako moment ndi and a podcast makende.
7 Days of Mayhem, a two and a mic monologue. When the year begins as it has, what can we possibly expect from the rest? This episode is not about my predictions. This episode is a record of how I feel we have begun in 2026 based on some of the facts that I have managed to find online for different parts of the world. The year began for me in Berlin with the news that hundreds of people had been seriously injured due to the extreme overuse of fireworks. Some had died. This is not breaking news, however. If nothing changes, I'm sure the news next year on January the 1st will be the same. I say this because it was precisely the same last year and the year before that. More shocking was the news that about 40 people had died in La Constellation Bar in Crans, Montana in Switzerland after a fire broke out. January 2nd brought more Saudi-led attacks in Yemen, an earthquake in Mexico, a bus and a truck collided in Brazil, 4 people were trapped when a building collapsed in Nairobi, and dozens were missing when a boat carrying over 200 refugees capsized off the coast of Gambia. BYD surpassed Tesla to become the world's best-selling electric vehicle automaker, having sold more than 600,000 cars more than the company run by the Nazi-saluting white supremacist Elon Musk. The Iranian protests that started on December 28th have continued to this day. The reasons are given as being economy-related, but we are well aware of the general dissatisfaction of the people of Iran with their oppressive government. This is a long-running story, and lots of people have had enough of the prohibitive, regressive, and brutal regime. The internal politics of Iran is extremely complicated. This is a country with a history that goes back over 3,000 years. It is a proud country. The people of Iran deserve so much better. They deserve better from their own government today. They deserved better than they had under the Shah between 1953 and 1979. What they deserve is a crack at another kind of Mohammad Mossadegh, whose policies focused on improving the well-being of Iranians and Iran, but who was brought down in a coup orchestrated by the USA and the UK. That today, now, we are seeing ICE-style thugs on motorbikes riding around with Kalashnikovs and randomly shooting people in the streets in Iran is a horror we wouldn't want to see even in a movie. Yet it is real and so much beyond horror that I cannot even express my disgust for it properly. Talking of meddling in other people's countries, on January the 3rd, the USA kidnapped the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, Cilia Flores. Maduro was a dictator. He did not follow in the footsteps of Hugo Chavez, whose policies, economically flawed as they were, having relied so heavily on the price of oil, prioritized the well-being of his people. Maduro couldn't see beyond his own nose. There is so much disinformation online, it is hard to absorb it all. So many platforms are using words like capture or abduct to replace the only accurate word kidnap to describe Trump's actions. By the way, there is a link between the 1953 coup in Iran and the illegal attack and kidnapping of Maduro, and rather unsurprisingly, that link is oil. The West needs to exploit the natural resources of other nations to convince the world that capitalism is the best system. It needs to steal resources to enjoy a free market. It is not only the West, of course. Inequality exists in many forms in many countries. yet it need not. There is absolutely no need to exploit others in the way that we do. There is no need to disrespect, exploit, rape and murder others and expect the world to understand, to forgive and to forget. Also, on January the 3rd, an arson attack in Berlin cut electricity to tens of thousands of households. Almost every article states loudly and clearly that the attack was orchestrated by a group purporting to hold far-left inclinations. Let me state very clearly the consequences of this stupid act. The primary victims are obviously the people whose homes had been cut off from receiving electricity. Of course, there were many who suffered more than others, and I empathize deeply with everyone. This kind of attack should never have occurred. The secondary victims are anyone involved in the left-wing movement. The left is not, or should not be, an anti-society group of militarized anarchists. The left is a movement that has brought workers' rights, the 5-day week, social security, health care for all, education for all, and the right to vote for women and men who previously had only ever dreamed of it. The left is still trying to get gender equality across the board, sexual equality and universal human rights for all. The left also wants to protect our future from climate crisis and collapse. That is the left. That should always be the left. It is obviously a broad movement. It has many who want to use only peaceful means, even when the right wing, the conservative, liberal and extreme right often use aggressive means. They justify genocide. They conduct coups in other countries to secure natural resources without having to pay a fair price for them, and ignore the historical legacies of their settler colonialism. These truths provoke many people on the left to pursue more penetrative actions. These actions in recent years have included protests, email campaigns, petitions to get policies raised in Parliament, sit-ins, setting up residence in trees or forests, blocking roads, throwing paint at art, blocking entrances and exits from companies that create weapons to sell them to genocidal states like Israel and Azerbaijan. The left movement is a very wide-ranging humanitarian movement that seeks to address the ills of human political corruption that has existed since the age of antiquity. The suffragettes used even more aggressive tactics than many left-wing groups do today, and the right celebrate the suffragettes. I wonder if they would do so were the suffragettes active today. Actions that bring normal people suffering, everyday people who are not engaged in illegal activities or work of a kind that brings murder and torture to others, or who do not support such activities, should never be targeted. Yet the need to protest is ever present. People need to remember that our awareness of civilization did not start with equality. When we go back in history, we do not generally have many examples of equal societies. For the last 250 years, movements have been underway to finally create equality within society, to finally create a civilization worthy of the name. Throughout European history, we have lived in societies completely dominated by men. These men have been religious fanatics. They have preferred to burn women alive than accept that they had special talents or knowledge. They preferred to murder and rape women rather than accept their own deficiencies. They chose to put their own names on the ideas and research of women so that people didn't realize that women could be scientists, mathematicians, and successful business people too. The movement to achieve equality is fighting uphill because every single societal component has developed along the basis of patriarchy. It has spread its tentacles around the world and forced those components on other cultures. There is no historical reference for an equal society. The idea of equality has broken new ground ever since it was first voiced. The fight to attain it is unfortunately also being opposed by the people who would benefit greatly from it because they are afraid. They are afraid because at no point in history has equality truly existed, and so they have no solid ground upon which to park their fears and try to live free of concern. People need to feel safe, and the only way they achieve that is by trusting to the pillars of governance that have always existed: religion, aristocracy, business leaders, the political establishment, or the super rich who we can rely on because they have created so much wealth and power for themselves. These are the people society has always relied on. Whereas the reality is the absolute power of civilization is the massive body of people among whom we are all counted. The super rich, the politicians, the aristocracy, and the religious fanatics are all leeches that have attached themselves to that body and are sucking out the lifeblood of it for all they are worth. Moving on with the start of 2026. The next few days cue accidents killing dozens in Pakistan, Kenya, and South Africa. More refugees dying tragically as they seek out new possibilities elsewhere. War continues to rage in Ukraine, Yemen, Sudan, and tensions continue to rise in Syria and Iran. In Iran, the authorities cut off communications so that people are not allowed to spread news of authoritarian government horrors. On January the 7th, an ICE agent wearing a face mask shoots unarmed Renee Good, a poet, peace activist and mother, in the head when she presented absolutely zero threat to him or his team. This was a cold-blooded murder without any recourse to the argument of self-defense. This was the actions of a man representing an agency using extremely questionable tactics under the leadership of a president who has endorsed criminality in many ways personally and who is a criminal himself. The president and Vice President Vance came out and blatantly lied about the circumstances of this unlawful killing and to date have failed to retract those statements, despite the proof of many video clips emerging that filmed the horrific event from different angles and which recorded the exchange between Renee Good and the murderer wearing a badge. The president and vice president lied, and they will hold on to that lie, in the same way they have held on to many other lies. And their supporters will continue to support those lies because it is easier for them to do that than to accept the entire premise of their vile MAGA cult is based on lies, and more lies. On December 31st, 2025, I wrote an article entitled "Fuck Happy New Year," and I will put a link in the podcast notes for you to see. I did not write that article pretending to have great foresight. Not a single event above was predicted by me, yet they were all predictable. The direction of events in 2026 do not take a genius to predict. We are going to see a lot of destabilizing tactics from many sides in many countries. Most of those actions will come from right-wing political parties, governments and activists, as usual. And as so many media companies, social media sites and TV channels are owned by billionaire right-wing and conservative extremists, the news that we consume will be largely propagandized, as it has been for a very long time now, and it will only get worse and worse. The media organs owned traditionally by left-wing sympathizers have moved towards the center because they feel they need to cover safe political territory. They feel the need to occupy the space which brings them corporate cash. They feel the need to seem reasonable to as many people as possible. Unfortunately, they have completely disowned many of the principles of humanitarian politics and basic human decency in the process. A vast number of supposedly left-wing newspapers have used specific language to influence sentiments towards one group or another, usually preferring to side with the occupying genocide complicit angle rather than the anti-genocide arguments. That is where the corporate cash resides. Corporate cash is easier to attain than forever maintaining the non-corporate stance. Corporates can be investors and advertisers. They can sponsor and they can support, not because they believe in the integrity of sincerity and human interest, but because of the financial benefit in advertising in a paper that once gave a shit. Not having to depend on the effect of a newspaper's reporting quality for continued financial support from the readership is one way to about face to attain corporate cash. Even when the journalists themselves are there and want to write the truth, they want to remain faithful to the integrity with which they entered the industry, they are shut down by political management, the recipients of lobbyist directions, and the benefits of corporate support. So what can we do in 2026 to peacefully generate change? Vote with your feet and your wallets. Don't shop with firms complicit in international and national crimes. If the European Union has decided to water down its supply chain laws, it doesn't mean we have to. Let's highlight and promote those companies that do things the right way and support them. Let's reuse items, visit second-hand shops and give goods a second life. Let's become more active in our local communities. Let's provide sporting services to kids and educational support to families. Let's create communities from strangers. Let's strengthen the ties between communities. Let's reach out to activists and try to understand them. Let's communicate with local authorities and let them see what we are doing and get them to support us too. Let's engage with politicians and tell them we no longer support their lies. Let's ensure that in every election that comes, we vote according to conscience and with a firm eye on what is best for the future of all. Let's be responsible where our representatives have not. In a democracy, the people who vote have the power. Then let us test that power. What do we have to lose other than an illusion? In the end, it is better to dispel the illusion and know what hides behind it than to remain ignorant of reality. Let's rise up and be curious. This is Two and a Mic. Two and a Mic. Two and a Mic. Two.